I still can't believe what happened on our moving day. There I was, following our moving truck to our new home in Willow Creek Estates, thrilled to start unpacking after months of paperwork and planning. My wife, Megan, was driving behind me, both of us exhausted but excited for this new chapter. Everything was going smoothly until we turned onto Cedar Lane and saw something that made my heart sink. Standing defiantly in the road, arms crossed, was a middle-aged woman in a floral blouse and capri pants. Behind her sat a lawn chair, as if she'd settled in for a siege. Our moving truck screeched to a halt, and I pulled up alongside, rolling down my window to figure out what was happening. Before I could speak, the woman marched to my car with the confidence of someone who thought she owned the neighborhood. "You don't have HOA approval to move in today," she announced loudly, her voice echoing across the quiet suburban street. "This street is closed for unauthorized relocations." I blinked, wondering if this was a bizarre welcome prank. The truck driver, a burly guy named Tom, stepped out, scratching his head. "Ma'am, we have a scheduled delivery here," he said, bewildered. "We need to unload this furniture today." The woman, soon revealed as Valerie Thornton, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association, pulled out a clipboard and shook her head with exaggerated disapproval. "I don't see her name on my approved moving schedule," she said, smirking smugly. "All new residents need advance HOA clearance for large vehicles on our streets." I stepped out of my car, trying to stay calm despite the absurdity. Megan joined me, her tension clear as she squeezed my hand. We'd spent months saving for this modest fixer-upper, our first home together. This roadblock was the last thing we needed. "I'm Nathan Reynolds," I said, extending a hand, which she ignored. "We closed on 4278 Cedar Lane last week. I don't recall anything in the paperwork about needing permission for moving day." Valerie's eyes narrowed, sizing us up. "You people are exactly what I feared, young couples who don't respect our community standards. I've been president of this HOA for 7 years and know every bylaw by heart." What I didn't tell her was that I'd read the HOA documents thoroughly before buying. As a paralegal, reviewing dense contracts is my job. There was no rule about needing move-in permission, and I was certain she was inventing this on the spot. This wasn't our first run-in with Valerie. In the days before our move, she'd called relentlessly, demanding non-existent forms and threatening fines. We'd assumed she was bluffing, but here she was, physically blocking our legally purchased home. "I need to see these bylaws you're referencing," I said, keeping my voice steady despite rising frustration, because we followed every official requirement. Valerie's face flushed as she pointed to an SUV parked horizontally across the road, reinforcing her lawn chair blockade. "That's my vehicle, and it's not moving until you show the proper HOA relocation authorization forms. I've called an emergency board meeting next week to discuss your violation." A small crowd of neighbors had gathered on their lawns, some filming, others whispering. Tom approached with an apologetic look. "Listen, man, we're on a tight schedule," he said quietly. "Another delivery's after yours. Can we resolve this quick?" Megan stepped forward, pulling out her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said. "This is ridiculous." Valerie's eyes widened at police, but instead of backing down, she marched to her lawn chair, sat firmly, and crossed her arms. "Go ahead, call them. I have full jurisdiction over who enters this neighborhood, protecting our property values from unauthorized move-ins." While Megan made the call, I approached the neighbors. An elderly man, Henry, introduced himself, shaking his head. "She does this all the time," he whispered. "Last month, she blocked an Amazon van for 20 minutes because it arrived after 5 p.m., claiming a noise ordinance." A woman walking her dog, Ellen, rolled her eyes. "Valerie loves the power trip. There's no move-in permission rule. My son moved in last year. We just needed the city parking permit, which you've got displayed." As we waited for police, Valerie paced her barricade, loudly proclaiming she was defending the neighborhood's integrity and that these new people didn't grasp Willow Creek's exclusive standards. Our modest truck seemed to offend her personally, as if it lowered property values by the minute. I began filming on my phone. Valerie noticed and charged toward me, finger pointed. It's against HOA rules to film me without permission, she shouted, voice cracking. Actually, I replied calmly, we're on a public street, and there's no expectation of privacy here, especially when you're blocking our legal access to our home. Valerie's face twisted with outrage, but before she could respond, a police cruiser pulled up. An officer stepped out, eyeing the truck, Valerie's SUV, and Valerie herself, who was now straightening her blouse, trying to compose herself. What's the problem here? He asked, approaching our standoff. Valerie launched into her explanation, gesturing wildly. Officer, I'm Valerie Thornton, president of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. These people are moving in without HOA authorization, a clear violation of our standards. I've asked for documentation, but they refuse. The officer turned to me, eyebrow raised. I explained, showing our closing paperwork, city moving permit, and offering the HOA bylaws on my phone, which mention no move-in permission. Do you have documentation of this rule? The officer asked Valerie. She stuttered, then said, it's an unwritten rule everyone understands. As HOA president, I have full jurisdiction. The officer sighed, clearly familiar with such disputes. Ma'am, you don't have jurisdiction over public roads. These folks have all the proper documentation. I'm asking you to move your vehicle and let them proceed. Instead of complying, Valerie's face reddened further. I will not. This is HOA property, and I decide what happens here, she shouted. The officer's patience thinned. Ma'am, this is a city-maintained public road. Your HOA has no legal authority to block access. I'm asking one more time, move your vehicle. Valerie stood firm, directing her fury at the officer. Do you know who I am? I'm friends with the mayor. I organized the community fundraiser. You can't tell me what to do on my street. What happened next was shocking yet satisfying. The officer calmly took out handcuffs and approached her. Ma'am, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. Valerie's mouth fell open, stunned. You can't be serious, she sputtered. I'm the HOA president. Being HOA president doesn't put you above the law, the officer replied, gently but firmly cuffing her. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As he read her rights, neighbors exchanged glances. Some filmed. Others shook their heads. Not one defended her. Another officer moved Valerie's SUV, and after an hour's delay, our truck reached our new home. Valerie was escorted to the cruiser, still protesting about her authority and how we'd regret this. Neighbors approached, introducing themselves, offering help. It was as if a spell broke, freeing them to speak. She's been terrorizing us for years, one woman said, carrying a box of kitchen supplies. Last summer, she blocked a landscaping truck over unapproved flowers in the Lopez family's yard. A retired man, George, shook his head, directing movers. She called police on an ambulance parked wrong during Mrs. Carter's heart attack. As we unpacked, more stories emerged. Valerie had bullied residents with fake fines, invented rules, and threatened lawsuits for years. Most complied to avoid her wrath. That evening, Tom, our driver, returned with neighbors, carrying pizzas and sodas. Thought you might be hungry after that drama, he grinned. Wanted to see how you're settling in. Over pizza, we learned Valerie faced 2 misdemeanor charges, obstruction of justice and disorderly conduct, with potential $2,000 fines and up to 30 days in jail for her belligerence. The HOA board held an emergency meeting, voting unanimously to remove her as president, effective immediately. When Valerie learned of her ousting at the police station, she had a meltdown, screaming about suing everyone. The arresting officer shook his head, saying, Ma'am, this attitude is why you're here. A neighbor who witnessed it described Valerie's face as shock, rage, and, for the first time, fear. She knew her reign was over. Willow Creek Estates elected a new HOA president, focused on fairness. We settled into our home, neighbors helping paint our fixer-upper. Valerie moved away weeks later, her for sale sign a quiet surrender. The community exhaled, free at last, Proving one's stand against tyranny can spark a neighborhood's rebirth.